We're afraid that the American
events. They really bring out a lot of energy.
January 1st, teens under 6.
There's been protesters killed in Iran. You said we were.
Cuba is, not doing very well right now.
14-year-old son is on YouTube and Snapchat at least 2 hours a day. The middle schooler says,
Do you believe that America was prophesied by God long ago about what would happen in 2026? The signs are coming thick and fast now, like warning trumpets echoing from the past, pointing to a year full of challenges. Crises exploding, society in upheaval, politics tense, the economy up and down, weather wreaking havoc without mercy. Do you feel that fear spreading around you? And have you prepared your heart for what's ahead? It all seems to be urging us to pause, reflect, and turn back to faith. Please write a prayer in the comments below for America to have peace in the midst of the 2026 storm. Because right after this, we're going to dive deep into all the events and uncover the full truth that's been appointed for America in 2026. And I won't keep you waiting long. We'll start right away with the first major event: Christian persecution surging in Nigeria and Africa. Are we really living up to the old prophetic warnings for America in 2026? Right from the start of the year, the news hit like a bolt out of the blue, forcing us to face some troubling realities. On January 1st, 2026, the charity Church Times put out a shocking alert, saying the number of Christians killed in Nigeria could double from the year before. More than 7,000 had lost their lives in just the first 220 days of 2025. And now this wave of persecution is spreading to the North Kivu area in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the village of Katanga got hit by one attack after another. All this news isn't just some far-off story. It's ringing a clear bell for our faith today. Africa is sinking deeper into chaos over resources and religious extremism, with Nigeria, the continent's most populous country, seeing armed groups target Christian communities to grab economic and political power. Starting in 2025, hundreds have been kidnapped and forced to flee their homes, creating streams of scared refugees. International Christian Concern reported that on January 1st, 2026, in Katanga, North Kivu, about 1,200 miles from Lagos, rebels killed dozens of innocent believers, leaving behind heartbreak to start the new year. Meanwhile, in places like New York and Chicago, African-American Christian communities are protesting strongly, calling on the U.S. government to step in harder and protect their brothers and sisters. In the middle of all this troubling news, the Bible stands out like a firm light with its warnings. Matthew chapter 5, verses 10 through 12, reminds us, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven." God's word echoes loud and clear, saying persecution isn't the end. It's a big test of faith. Then Revelation chapter 6, verses 9 through 11, sounds like a wake-up call. "I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God. Wait a little longer." These verses help us see that the bigger the trial, the stronger our faithfulness needs to be. Looking through the lens of prophecy, what's happening in Africa is signaling a similar test coming for America in 2026. Faith here in the U.S. could face attacks, challenges, and upheaval from new conflicts we can't fully see yet. The Lord is warning that even a nation long seen as a stronghold of religious freedom needs to get ready for darker days. If Americans don't turn back with repentance and unite in prayer, spiritual chaos could easily break out right here at home. But the story still has a big open space waiting ahead. Will America in 2026 stand up to defend our faith, or get swept into the world's fearful currents? The future isn't fully written, and that's what draws us to keep going. Let's join together and leave prayers in the comments for America to have peace through this turbulent 2026. Because the challenges are closer than ever. Interfaith Alliance pushes for a religious forum at the G20 in 2026. A small piece of news slipped out quietly at the start of 2026, but it carried a mysterious feel to it. On January 2nd, 2026, according to Religion News Service, Cardinal Timothy Dolan and more than 80 religious leaders in the United States sent an urgent letter to President Donald Trump. The letter asked the U.S. government to add an official religious forum to the agenda of the G20 summit that America would host in Washington, D.C. It all happened pretty quietly, leaving you and a lot of folks wondering why religion was suddenly front and center in an event that's usually just about economics and politics. The background to this request really gets you thinking. 2025 saw all kinds of reports about religious freedom declining around the world, from tough restrictions in Belarus to extreme violence in Nigeria. As noted by the Diocese of Scranton, this new interfaith alliance formed to fight extremism and protect minority faith communities. Unlike the existing G20 Interfaith Forum, this effort wants a stronger voice right inside the official U.S. government setup. You can sense that deep desire for unity, trying to work its way into the halls of worldly power. Things have gotten a lot more dramatic. From New York, Cardinal Dolan is leading the push, calling for religion to be included in the G20 set for November 2026 in the nation's capital. Platforms like Threads and Facebook are spreading the alliance's message far and wide, reaching millions of believers across the states. Many U.S. political experts say this move could directly shape the G20 agenda, where leaders from 19 countries, plus the European Union, are expected to gather. We're watching two worlds, faith and politics, starting to collide in very real ways, with numbers and media pressure. International analysts see this as a soft strategy to build agreement in troubled times. They believe adding interfaith dialogue to the G20 could ease ethnic tensions and cultural conflicts in our globalized world. From a secular view, it's just smart diplomacy. But when you turn to the Bible, you're invited to see it differently, beyond everyday logic. The Bible acts like a parallel lens, not denying science, but revealing deeper, mysterious layers. The Bible plays a special role in decoding it all. Isaiah 2-4 says, "He will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore." Psalm 133:1 declares, "How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity." Amos 5:24 calls out, "But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream." These verses help us see that the call for unity in Washington, D.C. isn't just diplomatic. It's like an echo of ancient prophecies coming alive in today's America. Comparing the two views, you can feel the clear difference. The world talks strategy, while faith talks God's plan. Experts see social causes, but the Bible sees divine purposes guiding U.S. history toward 2026. That final thought lingers. We're being invited into a different awareness, where faith stands above ordinary political debates. The interfaith letter is still sitting on the desk at the White House, waiting for a decision. The G20 summit in November 2026 in Washington, D.C. is getting closer every day. The shadow of global division still looms ahead, while you and I keep watching America's journey through this unfinished prophecy. Virginia's law limiting kids' social media use. The start of 2026 brings a heavy feeling that's hard to put into words. Right on, January 1st, 2026, local news in Virginia all reported on the new law that limits how much time kids can spend on social media. Stories from Fox 5 DC and NBC Washington pointed out the rule that bans kids under 16 from using more than 1 hour a day on each platform. The worry isn't really about that plain number. It's about the bigger question of where protection ends and control begins. Looking back at 2025, Virginia was right in the middle of heated debates about teens' mental health. Governor Youngkin signed changes to the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act, the VCDPA, and new rules under the VCDPA 2026. State leaders say social media is like an epidemic that's hurting students' focus, raising depression, and making kids feel more alone. Laws like the VCDPA were updated to give parents more power, but they also put a heavy load of responsibility on them. In Richmond, the state capital, the law officially started on January 1st, 2026. It requires parents' verified permission before kids can even create an account. According to reports on Instagram and from station WDBJ, 7 million of kids across the Northeast are directly affected. Schools, libraries, and community centers suddenly got a lot noisier as students couldn't just scroll freely anymore. Big platforms have to add timers and block access after the limit, bringing a big shift in how things work day to day. On parent forums like Facebook, Threads, and Virginia online community groups, opinions are strongly split. One side supports it, saying the law helps their kids break free from digital addiction and brings back peaceful family evenings. The other side calls it an invasion of privacy that makes kids frustrated and more likely to push back against their parents. Groups like WDBJ7 have reported many parents complaining that they now have to constantly monitor and approve each app, adding new stress to family relationships. What do you think about this law and the future for kids in the digital age? In the middle of all these arguments, the Bible stands out as a gentle reminder of our sacred duty. Proverbs 22:6 rings clear. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Those words offer a different view. It's not just about limiting minutes, but about guiding the younger generation to use their freedom wisely. Ephesians 6:4 goes on with balanced advice. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. If controlling social media doesn't come with love and understanding, any rule can backfire. Psalm 127:3 reminds us, Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. A parent's responsibility is greater than any law on the books. From this local event, many watchers believe America is heading into a major turning point in 2026. Other states might follow Virginia's lead, starting a wave of new rules across the country. In the light of faith, we're reminded to stay alert to the digital storms challenging American families. God's word seems to foresee that America's future in 2026 will be closely tied to how we protect the young generation from modern temptations. But the story doesn't end there. Will this law become a model for the whole nation, or get replaced by something completely different? The coming days in Virginia might just be the start of a bigger cultural battle, where the line between freedom and responsibility keeps getting tested. America is changing, and we still have to wait and see what really happens next. Protests in Iran and Trump's involvement. Anger in Iran in early January 2026 spread a scary feeling across international news. Starting January 5, 2026, the protests went on for 9 straight days, according to BBC and Reuters. The streets of Tehran were thick with smoke and chaotic shouting. The world watched the Middle East with deep worry, and it felt like that tension reached all the way to America. Iran's economy in 2025 was described as badly broken down, with skyrocketing inflation, high unemployment, and the local currency losing value fast. In Tehran, thousands of people poured into Azadi Square and main streets to protest the government. Security forces set up barriers and arrested many protesters, creating a picture of society on the edge of collapse. In Washington, D.C., President Trump kept sending strong warnings about the risk of violent crackdowns. In the middle of all that chaos, the Iranian community in Los Angeles, over 7,500 miles from Tehran, got caught up in the wave of anger too. Local California media reported gatherings in front of Iran's old consulate. Family members called home in fear, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. The Bible suddenly felt like a reminder about justice among nations in turmoil. Jeremiah 22:3 speaks out strongly against all kinds of harsh rule. This is what the Lord says, "Do what is just and right. Rescue from the hand of the oppressor, the one who has been robbed. Do no wrong or violence to the foreigner, the fatherless or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place." Those words weren't just for ancient Judah. They seem to point right at what's happening in Iran today, where innocent blood could be spilled any moment. Pictures from Tehran show a country deeply divided by fear. Reuters reported many markets closed, schools shut down, and traffic almost stopped. The government tried to hold control at any cost, while people just wanted to be heard. Isaiah 1:17 comes across like another call to human conscience. Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. In big U.S. cities like New York and Houston, human rights groups called on the government to keep a close eye on events in Iran. Trump's threats to step in if there was large-scale violence made things even more dramatic. World oil markets fluctuated over worries about supply from the Persian Gulf. Something happening halfway around the world from America could shake up politics in Washington during 2026. Looking through the light of faith, Iran's chaotic security situation seems like a test for the whole free world. The tension between Tehran and Washington, D.C. brings back memories of dark days the prophets warned about when it comes to protecting innocent people. We see clearly that power without a foundation of justice leads to downfall. That's why the Bible becomes a mirror for every nation walking through uncertainty. From this chain of international events kicking off the new year, many observers think America in 2026 is at a key moment too. To intervene or not, to listen or turn away, these are heavy choices facing the U.S. government. God's word seems to prophesy that the future of nations will turn on justice and kindness. But will Trump's decisions be enough to change things in Iran? Or will the chaos spread even more? The days ahead are still hidden in fog, waiting to clear up. U.S. attacks Venezuela, captures Maduro. On January 3, 2026, a quick military operation reported by CBS News and Brookings shook all of Latin America. More than 150 U.S. fighter jets took off, tearing across the sky over Caracas. It was big news that painted a scary picture of how power can change a country's fate in just a few hours, and we have to face that reality. From Miami, Florida, to Caracas is about 2,500 miles. But that night, the distance seemed to vanish. Squads of F-35 seconds and F-22 seconds roared in, dropping troops into the Venezuelan capital. American special forces surrounded the presidential palace, took control, and arrested Nicolas Maduro under a drug warrant from 2020. In less than 24 hours, Maduro was flown to New York for a federal court appearance. Word from the Cuban government said 32 of their citizens were killed, sparking worry all across the Caribbean. The operation was described as a lightning-fast attack, with thousands of troops involved, aircraft carriers close to the coast, and cruise missiles ready to fire. The global energy market got rattled because Caracas is a major oil hub in South America. Brookings experts said capturing Maduro would leave a huge power vacuum, raising the risk of armed fights between factions. Just one decision from Washington, D.C. could spark unrest across the continent, and the idea of world war doesn't seem so far off anymore. The Bible came up amid all the heavy military news as a warning about the sword of justice. Romans chapter 13 verse 4 says, "For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." Those words feel like a key to understanding the big question of our time: how power and justice should go hand in hand during political chaos. Right after Maduro was arraigned in New York, big cities like Houston and Atlanta saw marches by Venezuelan immigrants. Thousands of new refugees poured across the border into Colombia, according to the International Crisis Group. The huge numbers on migration and economic losses keep piling up. The Bible spoke up again like a reminder of God's supreme rule. Isaiah chapter 21, verse 1 says, "The oracle concerning the wilderness at sea, as whirlwinds in the Negeb sweep on, it comes from the wilderness, from a terrible land." No, wait, actually a better fit is, "The heart of the king is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will." The world is looking at the White House, waiting for Trump's next move. Will this operation bring a new era of stability to Venezuela, or just start a bigger chain of conflicts? Psalm chapter 146, verse 7 stands out like a mirror for what every government should do. Who executes justice for the oppressed? Who gives food to the hungry? The Lord sets the prisoners free. But history always shows that justice never comes without a price. This military event in Caracas puts America in 2026 in a mysterious spot. Bible prophecies seem to be urging U.S. leaders to choose the path of righteousness. But after Venezuela, where will the next storm hit? Will the Americas stay calm, or will the chaos spread fast to other lands? And the next part might be even scarier than anything we've seen so far. Trump threatens Colombia, Cuba, Greenland, and other countries. On the 4th of January 2026, from Washington, D.C., President Trump sent out tough statements aimed right at Colombia, Cuba, Greenland, and several other nations, according to CNN and Axios. Those strong words rang out like war drums pounding away without stop. International news reports lit up right away, drawing the whole world into a swirl of tense uncertainty. You and I can both sense the global political air shifting every hour. After the military campaign in Venezuela, the U.S. administration announced an expansion of the cross-border war on drugs. Trump accused Colombia of not cooperating fully in controlling the transport routes. For Cuba, he predicted a chain reaction of economic and political collapse if it kept opposing the United States. As for Greenland, that territory, about 2,000 miles from America's east coast, it became the focus when Trump openly suggested annexing it to secure Arctic security interests. These remarks immediately stirred up diplomatic waves from Bogota to Havana and Copenhagen. The named countries reacted sharply. Colombia summoned the U.S. ambassador to protest, affirming its sovereignty and national honor. Cuba condemned it fiercely, saying the U.S. was looking for excuses to widen conflicts. Denmark's government, which oversees Greenland, stated that any territorial changes must follow international law. European and South American media all ran analyses saying the world was facing a new spark that could ignite a large-scale war. Many experts worry that if these threats turn into real military action, the political map in 2026 will be redrawn with violence. Amid that heat, the UN Security Council had to hold an emergency meeting in New York. A series of regional peace conferences were urgently called in Mexico City and Panama City to prevent armed confrontations. Diplomats warned that just one wrong move could trigger a chain reaction among major powers. People in many countries started stockpiling food, and financial markets plunged over fears of world war. You're living in a time when peace might be more fragile than ever before. In the midst of this political storm, the Bible appears as a guiding light on justice. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 23 says, "He brings princes to naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing." Those words lead many to believe that all earthly power has limits, and the arrogance of leaders will eventually face the highest judgment. Debates inside America flared up just as much. On forums in Florida, Texas, and Minnesota, some strongly supported Trump's hard stance, seeing it as protecting national interests. On the other hand, many anti-war groups in New York and San Francisco criticized it, fearing the U.S. government was pushing the world toward disaster. U.S. media polls showed nearly 48% of respondents backing diplomatic pressure, while 37% opposed any idea of using military force in neighboring countries. In that picture, questions about national responsibility and ethics keep getting dissected. Jeremiah chapter 18 verses 7 to 8 rings out like another key for human conscience. At one moment, I might speak concerning a nation or kingdom that I will pluck up, break down, and destroy it. But if that nation turns from its evil, I will relent and not inflict on it the disaster I had planned. The Bible offers a view totally different from modern politics, stressing repentance and inner change instead of outside violence. Since Venezuela, this string of diplomatic threats kicking off January shows that 2026 could be a year full of upheaval for America. Many Bible scholars and pastors in the southern U.S. states affirm that God is using these shifts to remind the leading nation of the free world about its duty to justice. Our children's future will depend on decisions made in those power rooms in Washington. But after all those pounding words, what will really happen to Colombia, Cuba, or Greenland? And what price will America pay? The next chapters of 2026 are still a big blank waiting to be filled. Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act aims to boost growth. Starting the first day of 2026, the tax cut package, called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, officially takes effect, bringing some of the biggest tax refunds we've ever seen. Ever wonder what you'd do if your paycheck suddenly got a lot bigger? The economy back then looked bright in some ways, but it was also full of ups and downs. On the financial news, Wall Street kept jumping with all those growth numbers. Businesses expanded their investments. Folks spent more freely, and money poured into the economy, estimated in the tens of billions of dollars. GDP was expected to improve, but everyday living costs started shifting too. Many working families really felt the change in their wallets. Some were happy about it. Others worried about what was coming next. In the middle of all that change, the Bible offers a gentle reminder about lasting direction. Matthew chapter 6 verse 33 says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." Material prosperity can come quick, but faith is the foundation that helps people stay balanced through any changes. Not everyone sees the tax cut package the same way. Strong supporters believe it's a blessing that builds national strength, opening doors for jobs and new ideas. They think raising the deduction limit to $40,400 was the right move to free up the economy. On the other hand, some opponents argue hard that it could widen the gap between rich and poor and push inflation higher. Heated debates popped up everywhere, from coffee shops and schools to Congress. What about you? Where do you stand on this? Proverbs in the Old Testament also comes up a lot when people talk about wealth. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 to 10 says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine." Those words remind us that any gains, whether from policy or the market, should be used with gratitude and fairness. Real life in 2026 showed that economic joy didn't spread evenly. Some states benefited a lot from higher spending, but others struggled with rising costs for housing and healthcare. Experts warned about possible asset bubbles, while regular folks just hoped to keep steady jobs to support their families. Uncertainty became a common topic, leading many to look for spiritual values instead of just chasing flashy numbers. Psalm 37, verse 21 reminds us, "The righteous give generously." The economy might get a push from tax cut decisions, but kindness is the true measure of a healthy society. Faith calls us to look beyond short-term gains toward the common good. Trump's tax cut package in 2026 became a focal point of both hope and challenge. Some believe God is blessing America with a new golden era, but there are also cautious voices reminding us of responsibility and awareness. The road ahead still has plenty of unknown turns, and the big question about the future of the U.S. economy remains open, waiting for answers from everyday Americans. Stock market forecast to reach 7,500, 8,000 points. Forecasts suggest the U.S. stock market will rise strongly in 2026, pushing the S&P 500 toward the 7,500 to 8,000 point range. The gain is estimated at about 8.8 to 15.5%, thanks to better company profits and the growing wave of AI technology. Can you feel the exciting pulse of the financial markets in this historic time? Things on the trading floors aren't as calm as those positive numbers might look. At the New York Stock Exchange, the electronic boards keep changing colors hour by hour, showing how investor feelings shift in unpredictable ways. Economic reports, interest rate decisions, and geopolitical news create one wave of ups and downs after another. Experts keep a neutral tone, pointing out that growth always comes with risks. Big investment funds like CIBC or JP Morgan give positive views, but they also warn about the chance of a deep pullback if expectations get too high. The reasons for all this movement come from many balanced viewpoints. Some experts say cheap money in earlier years pushed stock prices up faster than real value. Others believe deep digital changes in the economy are opening a new era, where AI helps companies cut costs and build lasting profits. Future forecasts vary a lot. Some see a long upward cycle. Others spot risks of an asset bubble. The stock market feels like a vast ocean, shiny on the surface, but hard to read deep down. In the middle of this financial storm, the Bible comes up as a source of wisdom for smart thinking. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 1 says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again." Those words suggest investing needs patience and a long-term view, not just chasing quick profits. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 22 also reminds us, "The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it." Ancient prophecy advises staying alert and not letting greed guide financial choices. Analysts keep digging deeper into the temptations of profits in 2026. They note that as the S&P 500 nears record highs, excitement might make investors forget basic rules. Hot tech stocks, leveraged trades growing wider, and short-term speculation trends are common signs of an unsteady market. Still, many positive voices rely on solid data, saying company profits are truly getting stronger. The financial game goes on in a mix of hope and caution. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verses 9 to 10 warns, "Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap." Those teachings shed light on a balanced view of the market advising Americans to weigh opportunities against responsibility. The stock market can be a tool to build wealth, but it can also test human wisdom. Heading into the later months of 2026, the S&P 500 really approaches those forecast levels, but the path is full of twists and mysteries. Some days the market surges with bright earnings reports, other days it drops on inflation worries. Everything happens with the neutral assessments from experts. No one is sure about the road ahead. Even so, many believe this growth is part of God's bigger plan for America. The market keeps moving without stop, opening doors to the future with the hanging question: is 2026 just a short-term peak or the start of a whole new cycle for U.S. finance? Ongoing storms in California bring flooding and heavy snow. These storms are hitting hard one after another. Early in January 2026, California was all over the news like a place going through a real test. Reports from Washington to the West Coast kept mentioning this atmospheric river thing in a straightforward but kind of mysterious way. According to Politico Pro and CNN, on January 5, 2026, the snow buildup on the Sierra Nevada peaks had shot up to nearly 90% of the yearly average. A big jump that's hard to believe from the low 12% noted back on December 19, 2025. The sky was heavy and gray, with rain and wind mixing together, making folks along the coast worried about what was coming next. Are we seeing some kind of warning from nature itself? Nature's fury is sweeping through California. Up in the Sierra Nevada, around 14,000 feet high, the snow is falling thick, like a cold wall of ice. Weather systems recorded rainfall hitting up to 3 inches in just one day, measured the good old American way. The Central Valley is underwater. Highways are closed off, and airports have canceled hundreds of flights. From KCRA and Investors.com, snowpack updates from popular ski spots like Lake Tahoe and Mammoth Mountain come in hour by hour. Those huge numbers on water pouring down show the unstoppable power of these storms. On phone screens, pictures of flooded homes and cars swept away leave people feeling really uneasy. In the middle of all this chaos, the Bible talks about God's power to judge. In Romans chapter 13, verse 4, it says, "For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." Some folks connect this to how God's justice might come in different ways, even through a country's wild weather changes. Jeremiah chapter 18, verses 7 and 8 also says, "If at any time I declare concerning a nation or a kingdom that I will pluck up and break down and destroy it, and if that nation, concerning which I have spoken, turns from its evil, I will relent of the disaster that I intended to do to it." These words are quoted in a neutral tone, but they ring out like a serious judgment for the land caught up in these storms. The economy is taking a big hit. From CNBC and Brookings, these back-to-back storms early in 2026 have caused tens of billions in damage, messing up food and energy supply chains. Millions have had to leave their homes, small businesses are going under, and insurance rates are going way up. Experts say if the storms keep going, California's GDP could drop a lot in the first quarter. But all the reports stay objective, and they can't hide the growing unease. What do we think when everyday life can collapse in just a few hours of strong winds? On forums and social media, calls are going out for world peace conferences to meet urgently and stop the risk of global conflicts over resources and politics. These California storms have become a hot debate topic, but the news keeps a neutral voice. Which side will we take in this conversation? As the U.S. year 2026 started off with heavy snow and flooding, talk of purification prophecies is coming up more and more. Weather experts warn that the next waves of storms could be even worse. Will California settle down again, or will the chaos spread to other states, bringing the shadow of World War? The future is still up in the air, leaving viewers anxious for what's next. Polar vortex and stratospheric warming bring extreme cold. In mid-January 2026, weather reports across the United States suddenly turned to icy white screens. Reports from severeweather.eu said a stratospheric warming event had weakened the polar vortex, letting Arctic air spill down over the Midwest. From Chicago to Minneapolis, temperatures dropped way below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and cities that were bustling at the start of the year suddenly felt empty. Streets froze solid, schools shut down, hospitals went into emergency mode, Doesn't it make you worry when winter gets that harsh? The cold hit hard, like an unseen attack. Central states were buried under thick white snow. Using American weather measurements, many spots got more than 20 inches of snow in just a few days. Rescue teams had to travel nearly 2,000 miles from Alaska to bring supplies to cut-off communities. Stadiums, bus stations, shopping centers, all closed. Folks couldn't even get to the grocery store for food and drinks like usual, with shelves empty because roads were paralyzed. Millions of families hunkered down at home, just waiting for help to arrive. The hardship and suffering showed plainly on people's faces in that freezing weather. In the middle of all that, the Bible rings out like a serious reminder. Psalm 147 verse 16 says, "He gives snow like wool. He scatters the frost like ashes." Those words come across neutral but full of authority, showing that nature is under God's control. Weather experts say this mid-January polar vortex breakdown was one of the biggest climate events recorded in decades. The record low temperatures and huge rescue needs leave folks uneasy about what's ahead. Blizzards paralyze America. Interstate highways got blocked. Trains stopped running. Thousands of domestic flights were canceled. According to severe weather, that at EU, the strong polar vortex from early in the year got completely disrupted by mid-January 2026, spreading extreme cold from north to south. Farms in Iowa and Nebraska lost winter crops because feed couldn't get to the livestock. The poorest neighborhoods had to rely fully on government aid. Revelation chapter 16 verse 21 says, "And great hailstones, about the weight of a talent, came down from heaven upon people, and people blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, since that plague was exceedingly great." That passage hits like a final judgment, stressing God's absolute power over human fate. Talk about weather prophecies for America in 2026 keeps growing. Joshua chapter 10 verse 11 also says, "As they fled before Israel, while they were going down the descent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died." Those words are quoted in a straightforward way, like confirming that any nation can face trials from nature's harsh judgment. On TV screens, pictures of long lines of people waiting miles for relief food in falling snow show how small we are against tough forces. 2026 is turning out to be a year full of upheaval for the United States. Not just politics and military, but especially the weather is becoming a big source of worry around the world. Polar vortex, heavy snow, record cold, all piling up like bells testing faith and awareness. While rescue teams race against time, questions about America's future hang open and mysterious. Will this winter pass quietly, or are more cold waves quietly building on the horizon? The early days of 2026 have kicked off with one big event after another around the world, leaving folks feeling pretty uneasy. From the new law in Virginia limiting kids' time on social media, to protests breaking out in Iran and warnings from the Trump administration about getting involved, the news keeps changing by the hour. Over in Venezuela, the U.S. military operation led to President Maduro being arrested in New York, shaking up all of South America. In Greenland and Colombia, tough talk on drugs and border security has made relations even tenser than before. California is dealing with major storms and flooding, while the Midwest is buried in that deep cold from the polar vortex. It all just piles up, one thing after another, and none of it feels minor. Looking back at those 10 big events, it's clear America is heading into 2026, facing a lot of challenges in politics, society, the economy, and even the weather. Decisions made by leaders in Washington, D.C. hit home for millions of everyday people, from Wall Street to immigrant communities. The economy got a boost from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act tax cuts, expected to bring refunds from $30 to $100 billion and raise the deduction limit to $40,400, which has a lot of folks excited. At the same time, stock market forecasts, with the S&P 500 hitting 7,500 to 8,000 points, are stirring up both hope and worry about finances down the road. While many believe in growth ahead, those storms and record cold snaps remind us how small we really are against nature's power. In the middle of all this chaos, the Bible stands out as a timeless voice. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 23 says, "He brings princes to nothing. He makes the rulers of this world as nothingness. The scored." End quote. Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 3 reminds us, "Do justice and righteousness, and deliver from the hand of the oppressor him who has been robbed. Those verses ring out like a wake-up call for every family and parents about our duty toward our kids' future. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 teaches, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." As the weather shifts and nations shake, the message of faith and staying alert feels clearer than ever. We're called to wake up. Everyone watching today, repent, pray, and put full trust in the Lord so we don't get swept away in these waves of current events. Whether you support or oppose political decisions, the most important thing is turning toward God's blessings and guidance. Feel free to leave a comment or your own thoughts below to share your view on what's happening. Your honest input helps our community learn more and stay connected. Thanks to all you viewers for joining this look back at the signs of 2026. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any key updates in future videos. Praying you and your families receive peace, safety, and blessings from the Lord in the days ahead. No matter how uncertain the future seems, true faith will always be the strongest refuge for every home.
This is where Nicolas Maduro was taken last night.
History possibly pivots, and today, in a stunning act of regime change, the U.S. military...
We are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper...
All regimes are not considered the same. As Secretary Rubio said,
What if 2026 isn't just some year in the future anymore, but the start of real chaos? Bombs shaking Caracas, the U.S. moving into Venezuela, Maduro getting captured, threats pouring out toward Colombia and Mexico, streets across America boiling with protests, oil prices shooting up fast, and the whole world cracking apart in just a few short days. Time feels squeezed, hearts are racing, and worry hangs over everything. 10 news stories, 10 hard hits in a row, military action, power on full display, economy rocking, politics splitting wide open, nations clashing. It all echoes those old warnings in Matthew 24:3-8. Wars, famines, earthquakes, the signs that aren't strange anymore. Are you feeling like something's slipping out of control? Do you think this is just random or a wake-up call? And if this is only the opening act, has the final collapse already started? Before we dive in together and pull back the curtain on the hidden threads cleverly woven into these 10 events that are shaking the world right now, let's leave a prayer for you and all of us to be protected in the great arms of the Lord through these unpredictable storms. Okay? And now, so you don't have to wait too long, we'll get started right away with the first news story. Nicolas Maduro heads to first court appearance in New York. What's happening when power falls apart right in front of us, in the middle of a chilly New York? Around noon, on January 5, 2026, at the federal court in Manhattan, Nicolas Maduro is no longer the leader protected by the military and all the formalities. He's just a defendant in handcuffs, brought into the harsh lights of the courtroom. That moment makes it clear. The old ways are cracking, and the chaos in our world has stepped out into the open. Since 2020, Maduro's name has been tied to a $15 million U.S. bounty, like a warning that hadn't fully come true yet. By 2025, American warships were quietly closing in off the coast of Venezuela, tightening the circle day by day. In the early hours of January 3, 2026, special forces raided Caracas, ending years of hiding. According to Reuters, he was flown straight to the Brooklyn Detention Center, the same place that once held El Chapo, as if history is repeating itself with a different face. The scene in the courtroom feels heavy, almost suffocating. Maduro walks in slowly, hands cuffed, face pale, while outside there's a steady roar of shouts from the crowd. The charges are laid out, page by page, including narco-terrorism and the Cartel of the Suns network, accused of smuggling hundreds of tons of cocaine into the U.S. every year. No shots fired, but the air is thick with fear, the kind that comes when a whole system of crime gets exposed. In that moment, the Bible comes to mind like a strong reminder. Matthew 24:12 says, "Because wickedness is so common, the love of most people will grow cold." Those cold facts about drugs, violence, and corruption aren't just numbers anymore. They're proof of that cooling off, where power has traded away human lives. The hearing lasts 2 hours, but it feels like the end of an era. The New York Times called it a major win against drugs. But the mood isn't one of relief. We're watching a time when justice and chaos stand side by side, with such a thin line that one testimony could shake the whole region. Once again, Scripture acts like a mirror to what's real. Revelation 6-8 says, "I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. Drugs, violence, and these cross-border crime networks are the footprints of that rider, quiet but undeniable." The fall of one man doesn't end the story. It opens up a deeper hole. If Maduro starts talking, if other names come out into the light, how many dark corners of the world will get torn open? And right here, the downward path of chaos is only just beginning. Trump says America is running Venezuela. On January 3, 2026, at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, President Trump got right to the point with a shocking statement. America would run Venezuela during the transition period and tap its oil to cover the costs of getting involved. No long intro, no soft words to ease things in, just a straightforward message that shows power is shifting faster than the world can keep up. Venezuela has about 300 billion barrels of oil, the biggest reserves in the world, according to Forbes. But production has dropped from around 3 million barrels a day back in 2013 to just over 1 million barrels a day now in 2026, after years of sanctions and tough times. In all this, the idea of running the country isn't just about politics. It's about economics, energy, and global influence. The goal mentioned out loud is to bring gas prices in the U.S. down to around $4 a gallon, something that hits home for all of us every day. Trump spoke firmly, stressing that America would run things to keep it stable and stop Venezuela from falling into the hands of China or Russia. According to the Washington Post, big energy companies like ExxonMobil are ready with investment plans worth tens of billions of dollars. No warm feelings in his words, just cold calculations, like treating a whole country as part of budgets and market charts. That's where the Bible comes in, like a key to understanding what's happening. Daniel 7:23 says, "The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on earth, different from all the others. It will devour the whole earth, trample it down, and crush it." When power expands in the name of stability and control, the question isn't just who's right or wrong. It's about what kind of logic is driving that power. Getting involved to protect energy interests isn't new in history, but with global tensions high, every move can set off a chain reaction. Matthew 24:7 warns, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." Those words don't sound like some far-off prophecy. They feel like a familiar path that power often takes. Trump's announcement right away sparked a big debate. Some support it, saying controlling Venezuela's oil would help steady the U.S. economy and the region, a practical approach in a tough, competitive world. Others are against it, calling it stealing oil and a violation of a country's sovereignty, setting a risky example for international law. Both sides are out there strong, and maybe you're figuring out right now which one you lean toward. When oil, power, and security all mix together, the world heads into deep waters where every decision comes with a cost. The Bible doesn't judge, it shines a light. Daniel 7 isn't just about one kingdom, but about the rules of power when there are no limits. If America really takes charge of the oil flow, gas prices might cool off for a while. But if that stability is built on tension and confrontation, then where will the next wave of trouble hit? And who will be the first to pay the price? Secretary of State Rubio, U.S., not at war with Venezuela. Do you think this is a real war, or just an operation with a different name? On the morning of January 4th, 2026, in Washington, D.C., when Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepped up to the podium for the press conference, the room felt a bit unclear right away. His denials came through loud and clear, but the whole picture had this layer of doubt over it, making it hard for folks watching to figure out the line between military action and political statements. Rubio made it plain that the U.S. operation was only targeting drug cartels, not a war against the Venezuelan people. He spoke slowly, with a serious look on his face, choosing his words carefully during the roughly 45-minute briefing. Meanwhile, the fallout from the raid on January 3rd was still fresh. with reports of around 50 deaths, according to the Associated Press, creating a real gap between what was being said and the reality, spreading across news outlets worldwide. The background only added to the confusion. Rubio, a politician with Cuban roots, has supported getting involved in Venezuela since 2019, which has both his supporters and critics paying close attention to every word this time. When he stressed, "We're going after criminals, not civilians," the message was meant to calm things down. But with the recent images of destruction popping up, that reassurance didn't seem quite enough to ease the unease we're all seeing in those pictures. The tension isn't just from what's being said outright, but from what's left unsaid. There's no declaration of war and no full admission of a major conflict. That in-between spot has a lot of people wondering about the true nature of this operation, and maybe you're piecing together the bits of information yourself to figure out what's really going on behind the diplomatic words. The debate spread quickly. Russia and China spoke out, calling the U.S. actions an invasion that violates sovereignty and international law, while the U.S. side insisted it's self-defense to stop cross-border crime. One side highlights humanitarian and security needs. The other warns about power grabs and risky precedents. In the middle of those arguments, folks watching have to decide for themselves. Where's the line between necessary defense and going too far? In the midst of all that debate, the Bible comes up not to settle it, but to warn. Psalm 94-21 says, "They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death." Those words ring out as a reminder that when power justifies itself, there's always the risk of harming innocent lives, even if it's wrapped in reasonable-sounding language. Another warning sheds light on this unclear situation. Revelation 13-7 notes, "It was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. What something's called matters less than what it leads to. When violence gets approved under all sorts of reasons. When nobody calls it war, but the explosions still go off, the bigger question hangs in the air. If this isn't war yet, what will the next step be named? And how far could this conflict slide from here?" Trump threatens military action against Colombia and Mexico. It's not hints anymore. No more soft diplomacy. From Palm Beach, Florida, on January 4, 2026, Trump's words hit like thunder, straightforward and no dodging. If Colombia and Mexico don't get the drugs under control, the U.S. will step in itself. His voice booming, words short and tough, enough to shake up the whole region. Can you feel the mood shifting after just those few statements? The background makes the threat feel heavier than ever. According to CDC figures from 2025, more than 100,000 Americans die every year from drugs, most tied to routes from Mexico. In the minds of American voters, that border wall image never fades, and now the drug war is pushing beyond the line. When Homeland Security is on the line, tough choices start looking better. Things escalated fast. Trump said it plain. "If they don't do it, we will." A message picked up by Axios. Short, but packing a punch. Colombia responded cautiously. Mexico stood up for its sovereignty, and other Latin American countries worried about a dangerous precedent. On global markets, investors got nervous because one military move could flip supply chains and money flows in an instant. Matthew 24-6 once warned, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place." When threats come out in front of the cameras, those rumors of wars aren't far off anymore. They're right in the daily news, creeping into every home. Economic experts all spoke up with warnings. If tensions rise, 2026 could be even more chaotic than recent years. Energy prices swinging wild, inflation flaring up again, the rich-poor gap getting wider. In fragile areas, hunger and riots could show up as food costs rise and jobs dry up. A military decision doesn't stop on the battlefield. It spills over into meals for millions of folks. Revelation 6-4 paints a chilling picture. Another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. When peace gets pulled away, violence isn't just an exception. It turns into a chain reaction from borders to far-off cities. These loud threats aren't just political moves. They're like a big wake-up call. Power, mixed with fear and anger, can drag the whole world into a spiral with no way out. The Bible reminds us to look beyond short-term gains, back to something more lasting than earthly power. If military action really happens, the southern border could go up in flames, the global economy could shake hard, and those rumors of wars would turn real. The question still hangs: who's strong enough to hold back this wave before it sweeps everything away? America divided inside. Democrats criticize, Republicans support. The arguments blew up almost right away, with back-and-forth words filling TV screens and social media across the country. Every statement tense like a string about to snap. From Congress meetings to primetime talk shows, the air was thick with questions. Is America protecting its security or pushing itself into deeper division? Do you feel that tension when you watch the news? In just a few hours, two opposing sides came out strong, clashing head-on. Democratic leaders kept stressing the risks of breaking international law and Congress's role in controlling war, while many Republicans insisted this was the tough action needed to keep Americans safe. Each comment hit hard, no holding back, showing the real infighting right in the heart of politics. Interviews came one after another. Schumer came on ABC, sounding sharp, warning about long-term fallout, while Tom Cotton stood firm on Fox News, calling it a chance to rebuild strength. No middle ground, just arguments going in opposite directions, making the picture of America's inside look pretty heavy. What do you think this clash says about something deeper going on? Psalm 2:1 rings out like a hidden meaning coming to light. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The Bible doesn't take sides, but it shines a light on the chaos when people put power and schemes above coming together. What we're seeing seems like more than just policy debates. It's the undercurrent in people's hearts. Online, the split gets even fiercer, where supporters praise the decisiveness and safety, and critics worry about war and decline. Comments crash into each other, laying bare the unease, the anger, and the opposite hopes. Each side has its own reasons, and nobody's backing down. Which view do you lean toward when you read those arguments? Matthew 24:10 goes on like a cold explanation. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. The internal cracks are set in a bigger picture of unstable times where trust between people gets thinner. The Bible doesn't point fingers, but it raises questions about where a whole nation is headed. All these scenes put together make a sign that's hard to ignore. America isn't just facing threats from outside, but looking in the mirror at itself. When common voices start to fade, what's going to hold society together? And if the division keeps getting deeper, is this the slow slide toward some bigger upheaval waiting ahead? Big protests break out in American cities. Sirens wail through the city air, helicopters circle overhead in the cold gray sky, and downtown streets are blocked solid by crowds of people and signs. Washington, D.C. and New York both turned chaotic at the same time, where everyday order got swept away, showing an America that's really unsteady because of its own worries. With all the news coming in fast, it's hard not to feel like that confusion is spreading to every corner. Just on January 4, 2026, the big public squares filled up with folks hitting the streets, from the National Mall to Times Square. They figure about 10,000 people gathered in central Manhattan, holding flags and banners high, with chants of "No War" ringing out non-stop, cranking the tension way up. Subway lines got interrupted, traffic jammed for hours, showing just how big this wave of protest is getting. The crowd wasn't all the same. Groups against getting involved faced off directly with ones backing a tough stance, and arguments quickly turned to shoving. Riot police were out in force, metal barriers thrown up quick, giving everything a real uneasy feel. Watching those scenes, a lot of folks see how thin the line is between protesting and outright chaos. Matthew 24:9 comes across like a serious warning. Then they will hand you over to be tortured and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. The Bible verse doesn't point to one certain event, but it sheds light on times when society gets caught in conflict and people easily turn against each other. It wasn't just New York or Washington. The unrest spread to many other cities, bringing worries about violence getting worse and communities breaking apart. Security experts warned that when group feelings get out of hand, even a small clash can spark bigger trouble. Seeing all that, plenty of people wonder where America's headed in the middle of this divide. Revelation 11:9 goes on like a haunting picture, and people from the peoples, tribes, languages, and nations will look at their dead bodies for 3.5 days. The idea of public exposure sits alongside the chaotic street scenes, reminding us that the unrest isn't hidden anymore. It's right out in the open for the whole world to see. All these pieces together make a clear warning. When society starts to wobble, peace feels like a luxury. These protests aren't just voices against something. They're signs that people's hearts are all upset and ready to explode. If the tension keeps rising, will America's streets slide into new battle lines? Or is this just the opening act for a bigger storm coming down the road? Economic impact. Oil and gold prices surged sharply. In just one day, the electronic boards turned red. Brent oil jumped another $5 a barrel, hitting $85, while gold shot straight up to $2,500 an ounce. Those numbers spiking like alarm sirens, signaling a financial shock unfolding right in front of us, as risks from Venezuela spread out to global markets. The price leap happened against a backdrop of already fragile supply. Venezuela only accounts for about 1% of the world's oil, but market psychology reacted way stronger than that small share would suggest. The Dow Jones slid 300 points in the session. Money rushed out of stocks, looking for safe havens, and unease spread across the major exchanges. The panic doesn't need long explanations. Investors piled into gold like it was a life raft, while higher energy costs dragged up prices for shipping, food, and everyday living. On the other side of the screen, we can all feel the market's heartbeat speeding up, as if a turbulent future is closing in. James 5:3 rings out like an indictment. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. The scripture isn't talking about charts or indexes, but it exposes the root of the fear. When wealth becomes the thing we cling to, it ends up accusing our greed and the fragility of our trust. This price wave isn't stopping at precious metals. Matthew 24:7 keeps shining a light. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. When energy gets expensive, inflation eats away at income, and the gap between rich and poor widens. Signs of scarcity aren't distant predictions anymore. They're real pressure showing up on every bill. Amid all the debate, some folks see long-term opportunities in certain sectors, while others warn of widespread damage to consumers around the world. Economists pretty much all agree on the advice. Tighten spending, focus on building savings, cut back on borrowing, get ready for prolonged volatility, not to panic, but to stand firm. Matthew 6:19-20 reminds us in a calm but firm voice, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. That warning helps make sense of the current storm. Crises aren't measured just in dollars, but in where people place their trust. As oil and gold prices keep climbing, inflation could swallow up purchasing power, and the most vulnerable families will feel it first. If these prices stay steep, what wave will hit next? And who will be ready to weather it? Cuba declares national mourning. Reports 32 citizens killed. Sorrow hangs over Havana. Church bells ring long and low. Flags fly at half-staff, and quiet faces bow before a list of 32 names that won't be coming home. In that moment, it's not just a news story. It's the heartbreak of families torn apart by fighting that's spun out of control. Cuba has declared 2 days of national mourning, from January 5 to 6, 2026. According to international reports, 32 citizens died in the raid in Venezuela, most of them service members on support duty. Those plain numbers suddenly feel heavy when tied to funerals, tears, and letters that never got sent. In Havana, emergency meetings keep happening one after another. Officials speak out strongly against it, while voicing worries about a wave of refugees that could spread across the Caribbean and Latin America. On the streets, folks whisper about an uncertain future, as violence no longer stays inside one country's borders. Isaiah 24:19 rings out like thunder in a gray sky. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard. It trembles like a hut in the wind. The Bible verse doesn't describe one particular fight, but it captures that feeling of the world shaking, where human lives seem so fragile against powerful decisions. Pictures from the national mourning show coffins draped in the flag, long rows of white flowers, and children's eyes quietly watching the procession go by. The future suddenly looks unclear when death isn't some distant possibility anymore. It's a reality that's just knocked on the door. You can feel that unease, like a question hanging in the air about your own tomorrow. Revelation 6-8 drives the warning home. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. This image isn't meant to spread pointless fear. It's pointing out the chain of consequences when violence escalates. More death following, beyond what anyone intended at the start. Aid groups are starting to plan responses, concerned about the possibility of people leaving their homes to find safety. When conflict spreads, ordinary folks' lives get caught in a spiral with no way out. And the pain doesn't pick sides based on flags or beliefs. The Bible reminds us, in a stern but compassionate voice, that every life is precious in God's sight. These deaths aren't just a loss for one nation. They're a warning to all of humanity about the path we're on. If a refugee wave breaks out, Latin America could be overwhelmed by crowds of people searching for a way to survive. When that happens, what new tragedies will come to light? And is the world ready to face the true cost of violence? UN Security Council holds emergency meeting on Venezuela. A heavy atmosphere hung over the United Nations headquarters in New York. On January 5, 2026, the alarm for an emergency session rang out, drawing delegates into the meeting room with tense faces. The request to convene came from Russia, China, and Brazil, showing that the Venezuela issue had gone beyond regional matters and was hitting a nerve in global order. The meeting kicked off with strong statements. Representatives from Russia and China both condemned the U.S. military action, warning of the risk of breaking international law. On the other side, the U.S. delegation stood firm on national security grounds, saying the goal was to fight cross-border crime. The room quickly split into two camps, with diplomatic words sharp as knives. Secretary General Antonio Guterres called the situation dangerous, stressing the risk of things spiraling out of control. The seats were packed, cameras flashed non-stop, and the world watched every word. We're seeing a moment where each statement could tip the balance of peace. Psalm 2:2 serves as a key to understanding. The kings of the earth rise up, and the rulers band together against the Lord. These Bible words shed light on powerful alliances clashing over national interests, where agreement grows fragile amid ambitions. The debate dragged on with opposing resolution proposals. Russia and China called for an end to intervention, while some Western countries held back cautiously, worried about a dangerous precedent. The meeting room became a mirror of a divided world, where common ground is harder to find, and you could feel the unease spreading through the rows of seats. Matthew 24:7 adds another layer. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. The verse doesn't predict specific politics, but it describes the repeating pattern of conflict when countries put power above reconciliation. From another angle, international relations experts say this meeting reflects power competition in a multipolar world. To them, the Security Council isn't just discussing Venezuela, it's a stage for major powers to test their influence. This view sees the tension as an inevitable result of today's geopolitical setup. Putting the two perspectives side by side, one with biblical warnings about end times conflict, the other with academic analysis of power, shows a clear gap. One side highlights moral and spiritual depth, the other relies on political logic and interests. Which way of seeing it do you lean toward when looking at this deadlock? Psalm 46:6 offers more comfort. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. No matter how heated the debate gets, the Bible affirms that ultimate authority isn't in human hands. It's above every meeting. The emergency session ended without a clear agreement. The doors to the room closed, but the tension out there remains wide open. If the stalemate goes on, will the world slide closer to a major conflict? Or is this just the opening act for a storm called Armageddon? Getting ready for the 2026 midterms, Republicans have a huge war chest. Money is taking center stage in politics right now. With less than a year to go before the November 2026 midterm elections, the Republicans have announced a massive campaign fund of $300 million, a number big enough to shake up the whole power game. This isn't just a race of slogans anymore. It's a battle over resources and influence. The situation gets even hotter, with the ongoing Venezuela crisis still fresh in American voters' minds. Images of unrest, debates at the United Nations, and worries about border security are being woven right into campaign messages. According to Politico, MAGA Incorporated is leading the pack in fundraising networks, turning global worries into fuel for domestic politics. The campaigning has a sharp, cold tone to it. Mr. Trump uses every event and rally to call for support, pointing to the financial strength as proof of the people's will. The Democrats are fighting back, focusing on the economy, civil rights, and warnings about democracy going off track. Don't you feel it when money starts speaking louder than ideals? 1 Timothy 6:10 rings out like a final judgment. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, in their eagerness to get rich, have wandered away from the faith and caused themselves a lot of pain. The Bible verse isn't aimed at one party in particular, but it exposes the deeper root when power gets driven by greed. The political atmosphere is getting more tense every week. Attack ads are everywhere. Donation totals get announced like trophies, and any sense of understanding between the sides seems to have vanished. This race isn't just about who wins seats in Congress. It's about who controls the story of America's future in a time of global unrest. Matthew 24:12 keeps shining a light on the situation. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. When elections turn into battlegrounds, compassion and truth easily get left behind, making way for calculations and confrontation. In the middle of all this, believers are called to look beyond the news headlines and polls. This isn't just another election season, it's a test of faith, putting trust in money and power, or in a kingdom that's not of this world. Which voice will you choose to listen to in all that noise? Matthew 6:21 wraps it up with a straightforward reminder. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Politics can change, the numbers can go up or down, but the human heart is the real battleground the Bible warns about. If the Republicans win big in the 2026 midterms, will chaos increase? Or is it just another step on a path that's already set? Or maybe everything is moving closer to a bigger ending, where all earthly power has to bow down? We've just gone through 10 shocking world news stories from the turbulent early days of 2026. Which event made you feel like the signs of the end times are closer than ever? Please share your thoughts with me and everyone else. 10 signs have appeared one after another, like quiet bells ringing in the dark night of history. Not loud, but strong enough to wake up the conscience of mankind. From natural disasters, wars, and divisions in power, to the growing coldness in people's hearts, each piece points to the same direction. These are no longer just random events, but repeated warnings for the generation living today. Revelation 3:2 says clearly, "Wake up, strengthen what remains and is about to die." These words from the Bible sound like an urgent call, not to scare us, but to bring people back to real life. God is not happy when he sees humanity going astray, but he patiently waits for us to turn back to him. Looking back at those 10 signs, we see one thing they all have in common that's worth thinking about. Power is growing, but love is fading. Knowledge is spreading, but faith is getting weaker. The world is moving faster than ever, yet people's souls feel tired and empty. This is the time for each of us to stop and ask ourselves where we stand in God's plan. Luke 21:36 gives straightforward advice. Be always on the watch and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen. Repentance isn't a sign of weakness. It's the brave step of someone who sees their own limits and puts their trust in the Lord. If you're reading these words right now, take a quiet moment. Say a simple prayer, even just a few honest words, asking God to guide, forgive, and protect you and your family through whatever lies ahead in this coming year. Faith doesn't remove the storms, but it gives us something solid to hold on to when they come. Psalm 91:1-2 brings deep comfort. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. That promise is still just as true today and for the days to come. If something is stirring in your heart, feel free to leave a prayer or share your own thoughts. Every testimony, every heartfelt word can become a source of comfort for someone else who's looking for light. Don't hesitate to speak up. Faith grows when it's shared. And if you don't want to miss any of these messages, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel as a way of walking together on this journey of staying awake. Thank you for staying until the end, and I pray that God's peace covers you and your family. Mankind, wake up. The last days are knocking at the door. Are you ready?
in New York. The United States just attacked Venezuela's capital, hitting a military. This operation, there were multiple.
Late last night and early today,
and captured President Nicolas Maduro.
Este es nuestro patrio trasero